So today's agenda, we're going to be covering some of the hot topics that we're going to be covering is going to be the certification online portal improvements. That's going to include how to update a student's name, how you can update student expiration dates, student contact details, and how you can retrieve their certificates. We'll also be covering how to schedule online print. It seems to be an issue for some, and just a matter of how to do it, so we'll be going through that, as well as how to enter in workmanship when your students have workmanship completed. Following that, we'll close with our certification tip. So to begin, we're going to go ahead and get started with our portal improvements. One of the biggest improvements, one that I'm most excited about, is updating the student's name on the certificate. Oftentimes you will have a student where you probably mistyped their name when you entered in their information. So you can follow this procedure, which I'll go through with you in a moment, to update the student's name on their certificate. So I'm now looking at the certification portal. Everybody should be seeing that now. And to log in, we'll go ahead and enter in our email and our password. And I'm going to go ahead and go to my View Edit Classes so that I can see the classes that I have scheduled. Now when I go to view my classes, I do load everybody's classes that are loaded, so it does take mine a moment to load, so bear with me. Okay. And I'm just going to filter to find the class that I scheduled earlier today. So here's a class that I scheduled earlier, and in this case, I click on the course name so that I can open up that course. And here's a student. Now let's say that Angela's last name was really Senmett, and I just misread that when I was typing in that information. I can modify her name, her certificate name, to make sure that the certificate is printed properly. To do so, I click on the pencil to the right of the module and simply change her name. So if I needed to get that updated, I'll go ahead and click on or enter in the correct name, click on the check mark, and now her certificate will be saved with that updated information. You can also do this, so if your student, if you notice that you've printed the certificate already, then you notice a change, you still can go back and update the name as long as you have not submitted your class. Continuing on, the next step was updating students' information. So if you have a student and your student has changed companies, modified their address, or if your student, the expiration date, and this is usually at the CIS level, if the expiration date does not match what is listed in the field, you can let IPC know what the correct expiration date is or what the new company information is by putting that information in the student comment screen. So again, just to recap on how I got there, if I return to class details, so this is where my class is scheduled. At the bottom is where my students are listed. I click on Angela's name, and it takes me to her individual screen. These comments are specific to Angela only. So to modify this information, I simply type in a note and say, please update company to, and list in the company information, ABC company, and the address, 123 4th Street, city, state, and zip. And then what happens, you're going to save this information. And when you submit your class, this information is going to come into Angela's record. An IPC staff member is going to view these comments and make those changes on your behalf. And this also applies to the expiration date. So if it was the expiration date you were changing, an IPC staff member will review those comments and then update the expiration date within our database. the expiration date is not auto-filled on the certificate, so that's not something that you have to worry about since you control what goes into that expiration date field. Next, and just coming back into our PowerPoint slide to discuss what we've already discussed. So we've gone through the certification portal and we've already seen how to update a student's name. Now we're going to go ahead and get into printing certificates. How do we print certificates before submission and after submission? So to do so, I'm just going to return back to our portal. Excuse me. It'll give me my taskbar here. Coming back into the portal, when I have a class that's been completed, I'm just going to return to my class details so we can see one, so we can see what they look like when a student has completed their class versus not. Filtering again so we can see my classes. So here's a class that I completed yesterday. I click on that course name again to open up that class. And let me pull up a different one. This isn't the one that I wanted. I apologize. So what will happen when you have a class and your students complete the mandatory test, right at the bottom of the screen is where you're going to see, just above this, instead of it saying resend enrollment email, you're going to see a button that says send certificates. You'll see that button as soon as the students complete the mandatory test and that information is relayed back into the portal. You can click on send certificates at that point, get those certificates emailed to you, and that way your students would be able to complete the rest of their optional modules at a later date if they're scheduled for some. Now, if your students if you've already completed a class and it's already been submitted and somehow you've lost the certificates or you didn't receive all the certificates for your students, then you can also come back into your completed classes, open up the class, and here you have a button that says resend certificates for all students. So by clicking on that button, it'll let you know that a request has been sent and emailed to your name, your email address. In all cases, you will always get a pop-up box giving you confirmation that you are receiving that email. For online print, it doesn't say resend certificates. It will tell you to rescore certificates. It'll say rescore for all students. By clicking on the rescore button, it's the same exact thing, and just to give you an idea of what that looks like, let me just get back to our slide here. To give you an idea of what it looks like, so you have resend, send certificates, and to see rescore, it's actually in the handout that I provided you. For send certificates, this is what you can expect to see in your pending classes, whether it's online exams or online print. And resend certificates or rescore for all students is what you're going to see for your completed classes for online exams and online print. Next, we're going to get into online print and how to schedule an online print class, how to go about the entire thing. So to do so, we're going to go back to our portal. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to enter a new class. Before you can even schedule your class here, you must first fill out this online print test waiver. The online print test waiver just informs IPC of the reason why you are unable to conduct the exams online. Keep in mind that online exams is the goal, so if you are unable to do it, you need to let us know, and if approved, you will be able to go ahead and schedule your online print class. It is requested that you submit this form 2 weeks prior to the start of your class in order to ensure that you receive your approval in time. Once you have that filled out and you've received your approval, your next step is going to be to contact our customer service department to order your exams. Exams are $35 when you're ordering 4 or more tests per student, or it's going to be $10 per test per student when you have 3 or fewer tests. Just to give you an idea of what I mean when I'm talking about the exam cost. So here we are, we're in my enter new class screen. It defaults to my name as the instructor. I select my course name, select my language. Now keep in mind, language is the language that the exams will be presented to your students in. So if you were to select maybe Chinese, then your students will receive all of the exams. The exams that get emailed to you are all going to be in Chinese. Select your revision. And now the easiest way to keep track of how much your cost is going to be is how many check marks do you have. So if you have 3 or fewer check marks, you're looking at $10 per per test, per check mark per student. Once you hit that 4th check mark, you're looking at $35. So 4 or more is going to be $35 per student. Continue on with our scheduling. After we have our modules checked off, we go ahead and change our exam type. So the exam type that we're going to select is online print. You then enter in your start date. Now the start date should be reflective of the day that you want to print the test. And I always suggest that you do this 2 business days prior to. It does take some time to have the test emailed to you, so you don't want to wait and do this the same day of your test. And sometimes you may not always receive all of the tests that you've requested and may have to request it again. So rather than running into last-minute headaches, it's my suggestion that you do this 2 business days beforehand. Your end date is when you expect the class to be completed. So for the purpose of this demonstration, I'll go ahead and select today's date. And then you're going to select your invoice. So the invoice, when you placed your exam order with our customer service department, it automatically got associated with an invoice, and that invoice was automatically populated here into this invoice dropdown. So there's nothing that you need to add. You'll just need to select the appropriate invoice and then click on Add Invoice Number. If you have any comments that are general to the class, such as any delays or any kind of problems that you had, you can list those comments here in this box. Just keep in mind that this comment box is limited to 250 characters. Once you are done with all of your class details, you can go ahead and click on Add to save that information. Double check your information. And if you need to make any changes, you can do so right here by clicking on Edit Class, and it will allow you to make any changes. Otherwise, if there's no changes that need to be made, you can begin to enroll your students. To enroll your students, you have a few different options. You can enroll a student by their email address. Every student is required to have a unique email address. So if they're already in the system, you can use that email to enroll them. You can use their IPC ID number if you know it. The IPC ID number is a number that is, it's not the same thing as their certificate number. It's the unique ID number that's provided to them within the IPC database. You can also enroll your students using their previous certificate number. So if they're coming back for a recertification or to gain another certification in another program, you can use a certificate that's already in our system to enroll your student. Details of this were provided in the previous webinar, and if you need additional details on how to enroll your students, that can also be found under our Help tab. For the purpose of this demonstration, I will be enrolling my student using a name search. So I will go ahead and enter in my student's last name, and then click on Search. This will provide me with results of all students matching that name. If this is my student, I click on their name. If this was not my student and I need to add a new student, I can do so by clicking the Add New Student link here at the bottom, and it'll provide me with a form where I can provide IPC with all of that student's contact details. Because this is the student that I want, I'm going to go ahead and click on her name. And we'll see that she's been successfully added to our class. Once you're done enrolling all of your students, you return to class details. And now I have this option to get tests for all of my students. So this is the button that I press in order to have the exams emailed to me. It lets me know again with the confirmation box that the exams have been emailed to me, and to check my email. Now what you'll receive is an email, and so I'll go ahead and access my email address. So I'm just going to pause this while I access my email, and so that I can show you. So I scheduled a class earlier today because it does take some time to receive the test. I scheduled a class earlier today so that I can get the test and be able to show you what they look like. Okay. I've unpaused it, so you should now be able to see my screen again. Now, this is the exam that I received. So it does come from IPC Helpdesk. You want to make sure that you don't miss any emails coming from IPC. You want to make sure that everything with the IPC.org, IPCcertification.org, all of this should be whitelisted by your IT department. In my case, and what Microsoft has done, they've added a clutter box. So sometimes this also gets stuck in your clutter box when you're using Outlook. So if you don't receive it in your general inbox, double check your clutter box. Every email, you'll receive one email per student, and it will always let you know this is the printable test for Angela Sinnott. When I open up the email, I can see the exams for Angela. Following each exam is going to be the answer sheet that your student will use to provide their answers for the question. So they shouldn't necessarily be using this, but they should be using the bubble sheet that gets provided. Using that bubble sheet is going to make grading for you easier. So this is their answer sheet, and then following their answer sheet is going to be your answer key to grade it. So when you print this up, you're going to be sure to separate your answer keys from the sheets and then provide the exams to your students. When your students have completed the exams and you have graded their exams, you'll then return back to the portal, you'll open up your class, and you'll go into enter in their grades. So to do so, again, I'm going to open up the class that I scheduled earlier today. This is the class that I have Angela enrolled in. I'm going to open that up. And now I'm ready to enter in her grades. So to do so, I click on her name, and it takes me to her grade entry screen. To enter in her grades, I click on the pencil, and then enter in the total number of questions she answered correctly. Click on the check mark to save the information, and then do the same thing for the rest of the test. And then, excuse me, I think I'll do 15 questions. There we go. It was 20 questions. So I've entered in all the grades. So now that would be the end of what I need to do to get her grades entered if this were a discrimination course. Because I'm also doing a J Standard course which has workmanship on it, this is a great segue for us to go into our workmanship entry. So whether you're doing an online exam, which has the grades auto-populated, or if you're doing online print as we are today, then you also need to indicate whether or not workmanship has been completed. It lets you know which fields need workmanship in order for that module to be recognized as completed. So here we see it's required and not completed. So to update the workmanship, I click on the pencil to the right of that module, and now I have a drop-down where I can either say that they passed or they failed. In this case, we'll say that she passed. We click on the check mark to save the information, And now when I return to my class details, I'll see that a certificate has been provided for Angela, and by clicking on Send Certificates, I also get an email or the option to have the certificates emailed to me. And this will email you. You'll receive one email per student, each containing an attachment with their certificate. These certificates are much like the paper certificates that we used to use. So you will still need to fill out the bottom portion of the certificate. The certificate is still serialized, and it will come pre-printed with your student's name. Next, we're going to get into help and the different resources that we have for you to get assistance when using the portal. So in the portal, you have a few different options. Here under the Help tab, you can use the CQI Help Manual, which gives you detailed instructions on how to do different tasks within the portal. You also have frequently asked questions. And so I'd encourage you, if you have a question, come here to frequently asked questions to see if your question's already been answered here. Things such as the product codes that you need to order are listed here. Do your students need more than one email address, and just a variety of information that has been stored here. So you can access all of that information under the frequently asked questions. In addition to the Help tab, we also have the videos, under the Help tab, we also have the videos, and then we also have how you can contact us. So to contact us, use the certification tab. If you have an issue that can wait maybe up to 24 hours. To access the certification help desk, you click on the link. It will require you to create a new login. That login, when prompted, you can make that the same exact login that you use to access the portal, and the same email address and the same password. And that's all that's required of you to create a profile here in the Help Center. Then you see, as you can see here in the Help Center, you have a variety of options to choose from. So is your question related to logins and passwords? Is it a certificate-related question? So clicking on any one of these, it just helps route it to the proper person who can help answer your question best. So you give a summary of what the issue is. I want to change my password, let's say. Now notice as I begin to type, over here on the right-hand side, this is coming from our knowledge base. So what this does is it looks for keywords, and it'll try to answer the question for you, or maybe you won't need to continue to create your help desk. So as you see this coming up, go ahead and review it to see if your question has already been answered. If not, continue on with creating your help desk ticket. And then you can just say, how do I change my password? And this will create a ticket. So what will happen is when I click on create, it's going to email me letting me know that, okay, this ticket has been assigned to the IPC Help Desk. And then it's also going to notify the appropriate staff member that this help desk ticket has been created, and they will respond to you within 24 to 48 business hours. Now what if your question is urgent and you can't wait 24 to 48 business hours? If you have an issue that is a showstopper, you also have the option coming back here to the help desk. So let's say I'm in the middle of conducting an online print test and something happened where I didn't get my test, or something is keeping me from continuing on. When creating your help desk ticket, we have this help desk category here. If you change that category to red, immediate, I have a class now, we will address that immediately. So as soon as we sign in, you will get assistance with that question. We do have operations here in the States that go from 6:30 to 5:30. And then we also have a European representative who assists us with answering the questions when we are offline. So we have a lot of coverage and are looking to add even more. So these red immediate, I have a class now questions are typically addressed quickly. We do assess them to make sure that they are definitely showstoppers. So if your issue is not necessarily a showstopper, and I'm trying to think of an example, but let's say that your issue is more about maybe updating an expiration date. That's not a showstopper because that student has already completed the test. So if we see that it's something to that effect, we're not going to address it necessarily with that same sense of urgency that we would if it was truly a showstopper. With the knowledge base, you also have, you don't have to necessarily create or click on one of these to access that knowledge base. You can also click here to get to that information. So how, or maybe just typing in online exam. So just by typing in online, I get these options here. I can also come here to the Help Center, and which will also give me additional information. Browse all, certification help desk. Oh, it took me back to the wrong place. But that will give me additional information. So just by typing in the information here, online, or if I type in exam, gives me everything with exams noted in it. Now, if this isn't, if you feel that your issue is not being addressed quick enough, or you need something even sooner than that, you can also reach us by contacting our certification help desk line. So this rings on multiple staff members' phone at the same time when you dial in, where we will assist you with your questions when you call in. Keep in mind that customer service should only be contacted when you need to place an order. Anything related to certification, you can dial this number. Okay. Coming back to our PowerPoint. So we've already discussed how to enter in workmanship, and now we're going to get into our troubleshooting tip. So the troubleshooting tip is what I've already gone through, and how to update the student profiles and the CIS expiration date. We've gone through the help and the different various resources that we have. And this PowerPoint will also be shared to you, so shared with you. You'll receive an email from us tomorrow with the recording, the handouts, as well as this PowerPoint, so that you can be refreshed anytime you want to revisit this information, so that you'll know everything that we've covered, or if you've forgotten anything, you'll have this as a resource. So at 12:35, that does end our presentation for today, and we will now open it up for questions.
All right. Thank you, Amy. Great presentation, and we have some great questions in the queue. If you have any additional questions, please keep them coming, and we will address them as quickly as possible. The first question is, I see that changing or updating CIS expiration dates is a topic. Will it also be possible to do the same with CIT expiration dates?
Well, CIT expiration dates are driven based on what's already in our database. So if it's a first-time certification, it's going to be 2 years from when their activity date, from when they completed that test. And that's automatically entered based on when you enter in that information. And then the recertifications are based on what is within our database. So if they're recertifying and it's within 90 days of their expiration date and they have an extension, the expiration date will be auto-calculated. So that's why we don't go over it for CITs, because it is auto-calculated, where CIS, because we don't keep track of CIS extensions, we can't auto-calculate those expiration dates.
All right, thank you. Are certificates emailed to CIS or to the students?
The certificates are only emailed to the instructor. We cannot email them directly to the students, because it's the instructor who has the ultimate responsibility of saying whether or not that student has successfully met the requirements of the certification, especially when workmanship is involved.
All right, thank you. And here's a question. Why does the date change? When I enter June 2nd, it shows up as June 1st. June 3rd shows up as June 2nd.
I haven't seen that as an issue. Let me go through and see if I can do that. If that is an issue, so that would be an example of the type of thing you would open up a help desk ticket for. So we do try. There are bugs in the system, and that's not something that we'll ever seeing things happen. So if you do ever notice bugs, let us know, because that's something that we would like to get fixed. So let me go ahead and see if I can see what you're talking about. Now, normally you can only change the dates, and it has to be within your start and end date, if that's the date that you're referring to. If you're referring to the activity date, which was what I first thought, I would have to see that as an existing issue. And if you can, it would be great if you can provide us a screenshot or, something that shows that this is happening to you. But also just creating a help desk ticket would be enough if you don't have a screenshot available, and I would be able to try to duplicate that issue at that time as well.
Okay, we have the individual's name, and we can definitely follow up with her on that.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Right. Can we move on, or?
Yes. Yep. We can move on, because that's something that I'll have to investigate further.
Okay, great. Here's another question. When tests from the online test emailed to me, why are there duplicate pages?
Again, that's something that I haven't heard of before. So if that happens, and what would be wonderful if you can forward me that email, and you can send it directly to me. My email address is amywright, AMYWRIGHT @IPC.org. So if you can send me that, forward me that email with that attachment, with those duplicate tests, I'll work with our test site to get that taken care of. Keep in mind that the tests are done, entered in through a third-party company, so that's something that I would have to work with them on to figure out why that's happening.
Okay, thank you. When doing an online exam, how can I receive the certificate or copy of instead of emailing it to the student?
The certificates are emailed directly to the instructor. So probably what you're also referring to is when doing the online exams, as soon as the students complete the test, they're all presented with their certificates. But just as I showed in the online print, so with online exams, and this is the new improvement that we have, with online exams you do have the option to, and this is a bad example, but there would be a button that would be shown here for online exams that would say send certificates. So once your students complete the mandatory test, you can get those certificates here, and just tell your students to ignore that certificate when they're done with their exam in the test site.
Okay, thank you, Amy. This is a long one, and I'll take it slow. A CIT purchases an A620 CIS online exam package for $35. An online class is set up with the intention to certify to all 8 modules, but only certifying to 4 at this time, and the remaining 4 at some undetermined date as time permits. If the class with 4 modules, including the mandatory module, is submitted to get the certificate and their information into the database, how do they set up another class to access the remaining 4 module tests when the time is right without having to assign an invoice number since they already are paid for?
And that's a question that's come up quite a bit, and it's something that happens a lot when you're trying to keep production going and work around the production schedule when you're doing their training. So it's something that's come up quite a bit. We do allow you to schedule your class for up to 2 months. So there can be a 2-month lapse. So if my start date is June 2nd, my end date can go up to August 2nd. Okay, and that's to allow you to do those optional modules without incurring an additional charge. Now, if you go outside of those 2 months, you will be required to schedule a separate class. But if you're within 2 months, you can schedule all 8 of those modules at that $35 rate, and you'll be able to get their certificates as soon as they complete that mandatory test now. So that's just something that's come in as a recent update. So that it wasn't something that was available before. But as I've shown you, you'll see send certificates when they complete that mandatory test. And if you can get the optional modules done within 2 months, then you'll be able to submit the class at the end of that 2 months, so the rest of those tests are registered in the IPC database. Again, if it's outside of 2 months, you will be required to schedule an additional class, and you will be charged, and there will be an additional charge for those remaining modules.
All right, thank you. And someone is asking if this webinar will be replayed. And the answer is yes. We're recording the webinar, and we will send out the recordings as well as the handouts for your reference after this webinar. All right, here's another question, Amy. I had someone that started the wrong test. We could not back out of the test. We had to fail the student. How can we get out of an undesired test?
Usually what happens is it gets stuck in your cache, and that's why you cannot that student remains in that test. It's my suggestion to usually just use a different browser, because that browser doesn't have any memory of that student accessing another test, and when they log in, they'll be able to do so without the worry of trying to finish a test that they didn't mean to begin with. So that's one, and if you don't have the option to clear or to use a different browser, then it would just be a matter of clearing your cache.
All right, thank you. While doing online exams, the exam sometimes resets to the test page.
That's something that was covered in our webinar last month. So when that happens, it's usually an indication that there's something wrong with your internet setup. We do have a troubleshooting document, and if you can send us a help desk ticket regarding that, I'll see to it that you get that that troubleshooting document, so that you can resolve your connection issues.
All right, thank you. And this is a question of how do you extend the certification within 90 days online?
For CITs, so I can go through and show you that real quick. So if you're a CIT, and this is only available to CITs, and you come to My Certification Summary, it's going to provide you a detailed list of all the certifications that are registered within the IPC database. If your certification is eligible for an extension, it will say request extension right at the bottom of the expiration date. You'll see a link there. So the way it works is if it's within 90 days before or after this expiration date, that link will appear. When you click on that link, it's going to send you an email letting you know that your extension has been granted, and it's going to update, of course, in the IPC database, and then it's going to mark the expiration date with an asterisk, notifying you that the extension has been granted. Excuse me, that certification has a extension granted on it. So here at the bottom, you see that the asterisk indicates 90-day extension has been granted. For CIS extensions, that's something that is still only can be completed by the CITs, and can be done. You can do so using the CIS extension form that is usually found on your training CD.
Thank you, Amy. Here's another question. How can I print my own CIT certificate?
You cannot. Certificates are only provided by the instructor, again, because it is the instructor who has the responsibility of saying that you've met those requirements. So it's that instructor provide them to you, and again, they have to sign every certificate. So you must get that from your instructor.
All right. Here's a question. Do I need to submit an IPC online test waiver form for each class that is held for employees of the company that I work for and am doing training for?
Not necessarily. It varies case by case. So if you, each waiver is site specific. So as long as you're at the same site, you only need to submit that waiver once. And then some waivers get a blanket waiver where they're always permitted use of online print and will never need to send one again. Others, depending on the reason that you provide on why you are unable to do the online exams, you're granted a temporary waiver, which may then mean that you need to do another extension, or excuse me, another waiver form. If you go to another site, then you'll also need to do another waiver form. So it's always site specific.
Okay, great. Here's another question. If you email the test, then why do I need to buy a training package? Is that duplicate?
No, not at all. So before the portal existed, the test used to be included in those kits. But now that the portal exists, the exams are no longer included on your training CD, nor can you order the exams. I don't think it was ever included on the training CD, excuse me, but it's not included in the kit. But what you still get in the kit are support documents on how to complete your training, as well as the instructor guide, which is the most important tool in order to complete your training.
All right, thank you. Back to certificates. Will there be a new template for certificates so CITs and MITs can fill in dates, names, etc., like the old certificates in the past?
Well, so you can still use the same the same template that was included on the training CDs, and you'll just need to modify that form. So the way that would work is you print up the certificate, you put it in your manual feed tray, and you use that template that we used to provide, adjusting the fields slightly so that it can print properly on that certificate that was emailed to you. Now, one thing that we are working on, and we've talked to the test site, so the certificates also come from the test site. They're not generated by IPC's software. So we have talked to them about trying to get it so that some of these fields can be auto-filled, or you know how some Adobe documents have detectable fields that you can fill in, like a form. That's something that we're working with them on. It's not a guarantee that it will happen because it's also a restricted document that we try to limit editing on. So it might happen in the future where it becomes easier to keep that template at all.
Thank you for that response, Amy. Here's another question. On our company list, why can't we see the IPC number for students?
On the company list, the reason for that is because we are in a transition period for the passwords. So before we were virtual, and before we had so much going on online, everybody's password used to be their IPC ID number. And then we started saying, okay, well, we're going to want to go online, so we started making their passwords a alphanumeric, auto-assigned password. So it's not until we can get those other passwords not to be the ID number that we can display those again. When we initially came out with the portal, we did have them on display, realized the conflict, and took them off.
All right, thank you, Amy. How do you enter workmanship grades?
We don't enter in grades, you just enter in pass or fail as I demonstrated.
All right, thank you. Do you have to ask to have the certificate sent to you, or will it automatically email them once complete?
When complete, it'll automatically email to you for online tests, not for online print. Well, no, for both online print and online tests, it'll automatically email to you, but you can also click on that Get Certificate button to get them sooner.
Okay, great. Here's another question. Why are the expiration dates of the certification presented as year, month, and not as year, month, day?
The day, so according to our policies and procedures, the day, the expiration date, the certificates are always valid to the last day of the month. So rather than putting in a specific day, it's always known that it's the last day of the month, so we just save space by leaving that blank. You know, because it's always going to be the 30th or the 31st, depending on the month. That will never change. So it's always valid to the end of the month, so there's no need to really display the actual day.
Okay, great information. Why can't the certificates have the CIT information already on it?
Because that can change. So with the expiration date or with the CIT information doesn't get passed into the test site when we're doing the exam. So it does log who, IPC logs who the instructor is, but the test site, because it's a third-party company, it only logs who is actually taking the test and not their instructor. So it doesn't know who the CIT is. It can't do the expiration date because that can change based on extensions, and the modules it doesn't do because it's not set up that way in that test site.
Okay.
IPC is a very unique machine that we have to configure and work with what we have. Some of these companies aren't necessarily geared towards the way we run our certification program.
Okay, thank you for that response. Someone wants to know if they'll get a copy of the questions and answers tomorrow with the PowerPoint presentation. You will get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation and a link to the recording where all of the questions and answers are being recorded. Here's another question, Amy. For 7711 and 7721, must I send to IPC the test board and the print test like an evidence? I'm not sure.
No.
Okay.
No. So that's never been something that IPC has collected. Right now in the portal, the only thing collected for the rework course is the written test. We will, at a later date, also be requiring you to indicate whether or not the workmanship has the workmanship module. So, you have one required module with the test, and that's module 1. The remaining modules 2 through 9 are all workmanship. So we will be requiring that you indicate whether they passed or failed those tests within the next couple months. But otherwise, we don't need the actual boards or any evidence of what they've worked on. As a CIT, you are always required to maintain the test records and all of that information for auditing purposes, and that's for the duration of the certification, and then you would be able to discard that information.
All right, thank you, Amy. Here's another question. As the instructor, do you have to ask to have the certificate sent to you, or will it automatically email them once complete? I think that's
It'll automatically be emailed to the person who is signed in. So I say that because you have CITs who are only CITs, which would then email it to you as the CIT. However, we have a role called a CQI program administrator, and that's just somebody who is not necessarily a CIT, but is tasked with the administration work of making sure that all of this information, scores and all certifications get logged. So if that person were to sign in and request a certificate, it will be emailed to that person. So it's whoever is logged in that the certificates get emailed to. Do we have any additional questions? Ayana?
Amy, are you there?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you. I'll repeat the question. Is there reimbursement available if the student has been scheduled for 5 modules but only takes 2?
No. It would be my recommendation that if that student is not going to be taking the rest of those modules, remove them from your class. So meaning remove those, edit your class and uncheck those modules.
Okay. Thank you. Next question. If the end date is scheduled for 2 months after the start date, can the end date be changed in the class if the class finishes sooner?
Absolutely. You can always change it to an earlier date if need be.
Thank you. For online tests, every student must have a PC with web connection, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And someone's asking that they indicated that they missed the previous webinar. Would it be possible to receive that presentation via email? Yes, we will definitely send that out to you. Here's another question. This group loves certificates. Can you view the completed certificate in the portal?
No, not at this time. We are working on a download option for certificates, so instead of them being emailed, that you would be able to open up the certificate and download it. But to actually store the certificates on the portal would take up too much space and really decrease the performance of the portal. So we won't be storing and saving any certificates on the portal.
Okay, thank you. How can I get a copy of a certificate for a CIS in which the trainer is no longer working for our company?
Create if they completed the online exams and completed their portal using, if they completed their certification using the portal, we can assist you with that, and I would encourage you to create a help desk ticket so we can do so. Provide us with the student information, as much information as you can about that student, who the trainer may have been, and we can look that up and try to get that information for you. If it wasn't completed in the portal, we wouldn't be able to assist with that because those certificates were paper copies, and we never have copies of those.
Okay, great. And do I need to be an MIT to conduct classes for companies, or can I do that being a CIT?
Oh, you could conduct CIS classes for any company you wish.
Okay. Sorry about that. Do I need to be an MIT? Oh, sorry. Are the CIT certificates to be automatically emailed to the MIT?
Yes.
All right. For J Standard 001 certification, can I train a CIS for modules 1 and 5 without having to do workmanship?
You can do 1. 1 doesn't require workmanship. 5 does require workmanship. So if you want them to receive credit for workmanship, they'll have to complete the inspection skills portion of Module 5.
Okay. When ordering classes, do I have to specify per pack or module?
When ordering classes, do you have to schedule? No, not at all. And what I think is easier is if you were to just say, I want $500 worth of exams. If that's your training budget and you know you have $500 to go for training, you can certainly order it that way. But if it's all on your preference. If you're going through a purchasing department, they may want you to itemize it, and that's the time when you'll say, I want 4 $35 sets of exams. And again, just as a reminder, if you, especially for your purchasing departments, when you're ordering it that way, here under the frequently asked questions is where you can find the product codes for that, and then you would just list, I want 35 of the CQI online exam, or I want 4 of the CQI online exam mods. It's up to you.
Okay.
But we do the flexibility.
Okay, here's another question. Can I, as a CIT, teach, we already answered that one, can we use the IPC database to track the certifications, or do we have to do it by ourselves?
You're always encouraged to keep your own records. So
Okay.
IPC, of course, will always have records, but as a CIT, you should also be maintaining your own records.
Okay. All right. Well, that takes us to the end of our webinar. Thank you all for attending. If you have any other questions, please feel free to email us at certification@ipc.org, and we will be more than happy to attend to your questions and respond expeditiously. This has been a very, very great interaction with our members and our customers and all of those that support IPC certification. Amy, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and your dedication to making this process better for everyone. Look forward to seeing you all next month for a new hot topic. So,
just a reminder, following this session, you will all be requested to fill out a survey. And if you can just fill it out, there's just 2 quick questions, and that's whether or not you found this useful and what you would like to hear about in a future webinar. And we will try to gear our webinars towards what you want to hear.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone, with that, we will end today, and I hope you have a very, very good rest of your Thursday and a wonderful weekend. Have a great day.